All right, continuing on with my review of all the Gettysburg maps that I have from the various Gettysburg games. I'm going to look at This Hallowed Ground and Last Chance for Victory to do sort of a side-by-side comparison of these two maps. These are both from The Gamers, published by MMP, and here I figured it would be best to start with, even before getting to those, to start with, where the glare here, Thunder at the Crossroads, which is the Civil War Brigade series from The Gamers. And this, I think, even this predates when they were published by MMP, when they were their own label. So I want to say this was early 90s, yeah, 1993. So this is two-map Civil War Brigade series of Gettysburg. And you can see here, compared to the maps that I've looked at so far, easily the most high contrast in terms of colors on it. And I think people are probably of two minds about these old Civil War Brigade series maps. They were they were bound to the hex grid, right? So all of the terrain fills a hex. Like the terrain doesn't spill over into other hexes. Everything is very delineated by hex side, for all the streams and stuff. Roads go through hexes, so those aren't bound to hex sides, but you'll notice like all the water all runs along hex sides. All the terrain is fixed by hex side. So definitely, and you can see like that's elevations rather, not terrain, because you can notice that the woods aren't bound, they don't completely fill a hex if they're in them, but if there are woods in a hex, then that's going to affect the hex. So the woods, by and large, you can tell, are not bound strictly by the hex grid, but all of your elevations definitely are. And that's going to be a big change when we get to the other maps here. This is Regimental Sub-Series, and then even more by the time you get to Line of Battle over there with Last Chance for Victory. So I think this map is fine. The very hexagonal nature of the colors and stuff, because they're bound to the hex grid, those elevation colors are bound to the hex grid, creates a very artificial looking map compared to some of the other one-mappers that we've already looked at in the first video. So you have to be sort of prepared for that going in, that you're going to get a very, very artificial looking playing surface with this kind of grid. And I believe all of the Civil War Brigade series games had those kind of maps on them. I'm trying to think if Strike Them a Blow did video of this that I ended up completely botching. I don't remember if this map had that same, it definitely didn't have the same colors. I mean, you can tell just from that sample there, the coloring was a lot different on this map, and I think it was the same for Three Battles of Manassas, maybe not. Nope, that looks much more like the Thunder at the Crossroads. So just a common thing with the Civil War Brigade series maps, and they were refined more once they moved into Line of Battle. And then even for the Regimental Sub-Series, which Regimental Sub-Series was basically the tactical regimental level version of the Civil War Brigade series. So it used kind of the Brigade series rules, and then but at a regimental scale. And that was what This Hallowed Ground was, which was the Regimental Sub-Series treatment of Gettysburg. The other games in that series were This Terrible Sound, which was Chickamauga, and A Fearful Slaughter, which is Shiloh. And then None But Heroes was the first to use the new line of battle regimental system, which was, you know, a brand new rule set, wholly separate from the Civil War Brigade series, but designed that you could be backwards compatible, so that these older titles, including this Hallowed Ground over here, could use the line of battle rules rather than using the regimental subseries rules. So that was a pretty cool thing to do. So it made those older games still valid with the new system. So anyway, this, you know, I mean, in terms of conveying all of the terrain features and things like that, this does a good job. You know, it's got landmarks and stuff listed. You've got Cemetery Hill listed. You got the different farms listed on here. You know, which is always a nice touch for Gettysburg games. Down here, a little round top. You've got the wheat field noticed. You've got Devil's Den pointed out, Peach Orchard. So yeah, all the stuff is here. It is just, you know, obviously a much different look and feel. One of the cool things about this map is that when Rick Barber designed Summer Storm, which you can see the box for it down there, and then the map kind of hiding under there when I get to the Rick Barber maps. He designed Summer Storm. It's at the same scale as this map. So if you want to play Thunder at the Crossroads, you can actually use Rick Barber's much more handsome looking, in my opinion, Summer Storm map. And I've actually done that. I played a scenario out of here, I think, that had, I can't remember if I did Pickett's Charge or if it was just like one of the assaults on like Cemetery Hill, end of the first day type stuff. I don't remember what I did. I remember fighting around Cemetery Hill using the Summer Storm map with the Thunder at the Crossroads rules and counters and stuff. So that's kind of a neat thing. If you don't like this kind of artificial hex grid style map, you can use a much more illustrative Rick Barber map to play Thunder at the Crossroads. Anyway, so I think, you know, appropriate to one thing that the gamers were always pretty bad at was kind of graphic design. You know, like this is just kind of a hash of, I don't know, fonts and drop shadows and, you know, just badly sized and rendered graphics. It is, the gamers just did not, and, you know, their covers were always poorly rendered images, like somebody didn't know how to properly resize they had a particular resolution image and could not get a bigger one, so they just blew it up and it made it all blurry and horrible looking and just not great graphic design on behalf of the gamers. It's gotten better since they've gone with MMP, but even the MMP covers, you know, of the new line of battle stuff are not all that great either. So the graphic design has always been a little bit of a weakness for the gamers. However, the quality of their maps, the accuracy of their maps, I think has always been a very strong point. Dean Essig has a background in cartography, so he has experience with it. He's good with maps, and their maps are always really good. You know, they may be a little visually jarring, but the accuracy of them and the attention to detail is always excellent for the gamers, despite, you know, their charts and tables and box art being bad. Case in point with this Hallowed Ground. This is a famous picture. This is actually the same picture that's on the cover of 3 Days of Gettysburg and on the cover of the old Victory Games Civil War up there. But this is like kind of a terrible rendering. It's all faded, like somebody took a picture of the actual painting and just like it's all this sepia toned. It's, you know, I don't know if they put a filter over this or just the picture is so bad. I'm not sure what it was, but again, you know, more drop shadows and gradient colors and just throwing in a couple of flags. I don't know, just bad graphic design. But again, the map's very good. And so these are two different games from two different designers, so Last Chance for Victory is not just a re-implementation of this Hallowed Ground. This Hallowed Ground was Dave Powell's vision of a Gettysburg simulation, and Last Chance for Victory was Dean Essig's vision of a Gettysburg simulation. Obviously, Last Chance for Victory, influenced by this Hallowed Ground and bound to kind of a not the same but very similar system. This is a refinement and an improvement of the old regimental subseries system. I had set up this Hallowed Ground to play it using the line of battle rules at one point and never got to it because at the same time I was already running 3 Days at Gettysburg. And so, yeah, all right, well, actually I think I was running this. And I started playing this and thought I would play that too, and it was just a bridge too far. But I do want to come back and try this Hallowed Ground because I want to see Dave Powell's. I've played Last Chance for Victory a couple times, a couple of different scenarios over the years, so I'm very familiar with the line of battle system, very familiar with this particular game, this particular treatment of it, which is why I want to explore this Hallowed Ground. But you can see right away, this is just a straight up 4-mapper. And he also essentially released this game as you can play it with 2 maps, and he designed 2 maps specifically for the 2-map version, and then there's 4 maps for the 4-map version. So there's actually 6 maps in that box. Because he figures a lot of people are just playing this stuff, playing the scenarios that you can cover on 2 maps, and so essentially designed 2 maps for the game. And so I think that's a good design choice. This doesn't have any, reduced version included in the box. It is just these 5 maps. But you won't typically need to use all 5 if you're just playing, specific scenarios. So obviously, looking at the various terrain features that we're familiar with, you can see big round top, little round top. Running up Cemetery Ridge here, Cemetery Hill, Culp's Hill, Gettysburg. And then you've got, quite a bit of distance. And I'm not sure if this actually includes the East Cavalry Field. I'm not seeing, they wouldn't label it that way on here. So I'm not sure exactly where the East Cavalry Field would be on here. I've never actually visited it at the Gettysburg battlefield. That's on my list of things to do on my next visit there. I have been to Gettysburg a number of times, 5 or 6 times. Most of those in the past 6 years, 7 years. No, I think 2013 was the first time that I had been there in 20 years. So that was 2013, almost 8 years ago. So I've been there about 4 times in the last 8 years, I guess. But still haven't been out to the East Cavalry Field. So that's something I need to remedy. But this obviously, and this is going to be the same scale. These are both regimental scale games. And the interesting thing is that there's as much revealed south of here as there is. And I think a lot of that is just because of when you're playing the full scenario, where units come on is a big deal, and then where you can move those units. So that's why you get, a lot more terrain that's not typically seen on a Gettysburg map, which is stuff, considerably to the south of Big Round Top and Bushman's Hill, which, the Confederates that launched their attack from Warfield Ridge, you've got Warfield Ridge here, and I can't remember if there were any units that were actually on Bushman's Hill or not. I know Longstreet launched his attack from Warfield Ridge, heading that way. So I don't know if he may have posted artillery, maybe there's some cavalry here, I'm not sure. But typically, this was the extremity in terms of the southern part of the battlefield that any combat units were actually at for the battle. So you got a lot of extra terrain there. Not a whole lot of extra terrain to the north. Certainly that map continues off to the east considerably more than what Last Chance for Victory offers in that regard. So, because Wolf Hill is, you know, the very eastern extremity of the map there, and for here you've got considerably more terrain going over that way. Let's see. So here you have Hare Ridge here. You know, not a lot of terrain to the west of Hare Ridge on that map. And hopefully, I'm trying to move it as slow and steady as I can, but hopefully it's not making people sick with the spinning around of the camera. But here you go all the way over to Whistler's Ridge and even Lore's Ridge on the corner of the map there. So this just gives you a little more east-west terrain on the board compared to what you get on the 4 map over there. So in terms of design and style, obviously a much deeper, darker color palette on the maps for this Hallowed ground compared to Last Chance for Victory. Last Chance for Victory has, I think, more natural-looking browns and pale colors. I don't think either are particularly representative of, you know, I don't know. I guess if you did an aerial view, you know, a drone view over Gettysburg in July, this is probably more like what you'd see. You'd see some more deep greens in there. I think just from the trees. The trees are much more prominent. So you can see here, they have these sort of little illustrated trees, and you can see all the illustrated rocks and stuff, and the rough terrain around the bare face of Little Round Top, and the big boulders of Devil's Den and stuff like that. You know, these have that little sort of, I don't know, animated little slightly cartoony quality to them for the trees, whereas your trees and forests over here are that kind of, the trees are less individually illustrated and more kind of like a carpet, you know, of a template of texture over the top instead of little sort of individually drawn trees. You can also see that, I think on here, and it doesn't actually have the level gradient for both of these is pretty big, and I think this map actually has it here, listed here. So you've got 17 levels. I could have sworn, for the elevation key, I could have sworn there was more on the Last Chance for Victory map than there was on this map. But this looks like it has the same number, because 17, that's a lot, right? To determine elevation, 17 different levels or layers of elevation. It is a problem with this system. And this one is the same way. I can't remember. I thought this one only had 15 as opposed to 17. But there are a lot. I mean, you get a lot of very subtly different colors. And I think here, if you look, if I can get it without the glare, it gets really hard to tell stuff apart. And when you get to these lower levels of green, almost into like a bluish gray color, you know, does it look like, when you're just looking at the map, does it look like there's 17 different levels there? It really doesn't. And so, yeah, so you have to be, I don't know, always paying attention to it. And it was equally difficult, I think, for me in this game too, determining, you know, if you're looking at Cemetery Hill, for example, are you jumping, you know, how many levels are you really jumping if you're firing from here to here? And it was sometimes very difficult to determine just how many levels. Are they skipping levels? You know, how's it working? Because it doesn't feel like there's 15 layers there, but there apparently should be between the highest point and the lowest point on the map. So if there was any complaint that I had about these particular maps, it's that do we need 17 layers of elevation? You know, if you took some of those away, what would that sacrifice in terms of simulation value in the game? And usually my feeling is not a whole lot. So, you know, anytime you can spare the amount of work that you have to put into something to get a simulation value, you know, if you can simplify things without ruining simulation value, you know, where's the balance that you can strike with that? And, you know, that is the quintessential game design dilemma, or war game design dilemma, is where do you sacrifice realism for simplicity? And I think one of the ways that they could have done that with this was to have less than 15 or 17 different layers of elevation. But, you know, other people may disagree. You could see there is, when I was down here, you could see kind of, there you go, where there's a correction made to the map, a little sticker that I put on there that happens to be right here by the Rose Woods. It's come loose. I put it on like label paper and stuck it to the map, but it was, of course it's right on a fold, so then when you put the map away, it kind of pulls the rest of it away. But on the original map, the woods continued between the stony hill and this little ridge here by the Rose Woods. So this was all filled with trees here, and historically there was a gap in the woods leading into the wheat field. And so this was, you know, a big enough deal that they corrected it, because you could have guns, you know, getting fire into this portion of the wheat field that would not have been blocked by trees. And I'm not sure if they also changed the impassable, or not impassable, but penalty, like tree penalty hex sides in this particular square here that's kind of this marshy square as well. So I know they removed the trees there. I don't remember if there was anything else regarding these hex sides and stuff that they also changed on the corrected piece, which is, you can see this is the edge of the corrected piece here. So like I said, it focused mainly on the trees. There may have been something about this hex that was changed too. I don't remember. I guess I could peel it up and see. Nope, it looks like it's the same. So there it is. Maybe that isn't label paper. Is that just taped? Yeah, it is just taped. I had two versions. I had two copies of this game, and my original copy, I had used label paper and just stuck it on there, and it worked perfect. So I may do that again. Print out the replacement piece on my laser printer and onto label paper, and just stick it on the map, so I don't have to worry about it curling up or falling off. I ended up giving away my other copy during my Board Game Geek Guild Christmas White Elephant exchange, which was always a lot of fun. You know, is getting a good, valuable monster game to a good home where you know it's going to be played is always gratifying. So in terms of the style of the map, I mean, you look at it, the fonts and everything on here. The gamers' maps all look the same. They all use the same font. There's really nothing about these maps, you know, in terms of graphic design or anything like that, that evokes a 19th century feel. They are, you know, their World War II maps have the same font and stuff on them, so their World War II maps look just like their Civil War maps. There's not really any difference. This older version looks a little different than their World War II stuff, like their you can see over here, like the OCS titles and BCS titles. These are all the gamers as well that follow their graphic design in terms of maps. This definitely looks different than their OCS stuff. This looks like when they went to line of battle, it's like they moved these closer to the OCS stuff than they did for the older regimental sub-series stuff. But, you know, again, like the fonts are all the same. Oh, hey, there's that clump of trees. And I know, I'm not sure if Rick Barber was involved in doing the maps for this. I mean, not graphic design, but in terms of research for these maps. I know he's done a lot of research for Gettysburg Games, even if he didn't necessarily do the artwork for the maps. So that's why I'm wondering if he was involved at all with this, because it does have little things called out on it, like that clump of trees and the angle. Just looking to see if there's other little things. He puts kind of little, what I would call Easter eggs into his maps sometimes. And Party Field, there at Culp's Hill. Stevens Knoll. Wonder if he calls out Barlow's Knoll. At the time of the battle, Barlow's Knoll was not actually obviously called Barlow's Knoll, because, no, it was Blocker's Knoll up there. That's what eventually becomes Barlow's Knoll. Whereas a lot of Gettysburg maps will just call it Barlow's Knoll, so people will realize that. But like I said earlier, there's no 19th century feel to these maps in terms of font, in terms of colors, in terms of graphic design, logos, charts, text, anything like that. These could just be any, like I said, they could just easily be a World War II map. Here they call it. They mention Barlow's. Yeah, this is Barlow's Knoll, just so you know where it is. So, and then things like the railroad cut, that I pointed out on other maps. Here it's shown with these red lines to show where, what hex sides that the units would not be able to get out of. And that was the big thing about the railroad cut. The guys ran in there because it was sheltering from the fire, and then they realized they couldn't get out, and a bunch of Confederates had to surrender. It is handled on this map with a little bit different design. They, instead of just putting colored lines there, they actually tried to make some terrain-looking, little terrain artwork around the cut. And they actually label the cuts here, which is the west cut, the middle cut, and the east cut. Did this actually do that? I don't think it did. Yeah, it doesn't label the different cuts of the railroad. It does label the unfinished tapeworm railroad bed, but it doesn't actually say, middle, east cut, etc., etc. So, anyway, I think, they're both very, very good-looking maps, I think, but they are not evocative of either the battle or the 19th century or the era, which I think this one is a little bit more, just because of the graphics of it, the trees and stuff make it a little more artistic, or illustrative. They give it a little bit more character. The rendering of trees on here kind of doesn't add any character at all, really. So not a lot of character on this map as opposed to this map, but overall not much character on either. When we get to 3 Days of Gettysburg down there, comparing that with Terrible Swift Sword, you will see, I think there's much more character on the 3 Days of Gettysburg map in terms of evoking a Civil War battle, and what you think about in that era when you think of the images that are in your head regarding terrain and units and things like that. So, but it's still a toss-up for me. I mean, this is not evaluating systems at all. It's a toss-up for me. I really love Line of Battle and Civil War Brigade series, but I also have grown to really, really like the great battles of the American Civil War that 3 Days of Gettysburg uses. And it's really tough to call a favorite. I've played both Gettysburg games, and I love them both pretty much equally. It's really hard to go one way or the other in favor. So I just wanted to do a side-by-side comparison of these, just to get an idea of size. Obviously, you're dealing with more size on this hallowed ground. I don't think, I'm trying to think of which of these maps you could get away with not using. I think it's probably map C. That's probably the one that lifts out the easiest. And you only need the 4 maps of, that has Hare Ridge, the town, and the southern, the round tops on it. And even, the round tops, it's split right down the middle, so you still have to use both of these to do any of the round top fighting, I think. So, yeah, so I think you can probably do 4 maps for this and not have this map C over here for most of the scenarios, but, and then for this one, there's definitely a 2-map version of the game that you can play, but obviously it's go big or go home as far as I'm concerned when it comes to the big monster tactical treatments, so I always like to have the full meal deal out here on the table when I play these. So I look forward to getting this Hallowed Ground to the table, hopefully soon. Doing this this Gettysburg map review has kind of gotten me interested in doing another Gettysburg game, but it will probably be a Most Fearful Sacrifice when I get that, when that comes in from Flying Pig Games. That will probably be the one that I'll play next, just because it'll be new. I'm interested in getting it. Can't wait to see the big Rick Barber mounted maps for it. So, and I think it may have shipped. I got a shipping notice yesterday from Orlando, which is where I think it's coming from. So, but I also have something else that's potentially coming from Orlando. So I'm not sure which is which yet, but I hope that that's it, that it's shipping and that I should have it sometime this week. So we will see.